You ever have one of those nights that starts like any other, and then in the span of a coffee sip and a wrong calendar alert, everything about you gets rearranged? This is that kind of night. My name is Sierra, and I want to tell you about the time I almost lost everything for doing the one thing that felt like the only right thing to do. Act 1. Hook. It was a weekday dinner rush at Larkin Hollow, which is a fancy restaurant uptown that smells like oak polish and expensive candles, and I'm moving between tables smiling in the way I trained myself to smile. Table 9 was special that night. A private booking tuxedos whispers the kind of people who make the world run in quiet rooms. The guy at the head of the table, Miles Hargrove, tech founder name in the papers, confident like he could buy the weather. His calendar popped up on his phone as I refilled his water. Heli, depart 800 p.m. Tail ZKY1127. That tail number hit me the way cold hits your spine. I'd seen it that morning, on a red maintenance tag at the city vertiport, the one my Uncle Matt works at. He'd told me straight as maple syrup, "Sierra, don't let anyone fly that bird tonight, it's not safe." I took a picture of the tag because who carries these things in their head, right? You take a picture. I could have walked away. I could have finished my shift, gone home, tucked my little brother in, nodded at rent notices, and kept my head down. That's what I'd been taught: be grateful, be quiet, don't rock anything. But something in my chest, maybe the memory of my mom, a mechanic who died when someone ignored a warning, tightened, and I walked up to the table and said, soft but firm, "Sir, I don't mean to interrupt, but please don't get on that helicopter tonight. It's been red tagged." He laughed, not a small chuckle, the kind that is meant to put you in your place, and said, "Excuse me, who are you?" And the room leaned in. That laugh could have been the end of it, a punchline, a door, another name on a staff folder. Instead, it was the beginning of everything that followed. Act 2. The struggle and turning point. When I say my life was fragile, I don't mean it like a metaphor. I mean it in literal ways. Final rent notice on the kitchen table. Scholarship rejection in my inbox. 3 younger siblings depending on me for meals and homework and reasons to smile. I was 19, working double shifts to keep lights on, and the idea of losing my job terrified me. My manager Kevin came over and hissed, "Back of house now." He smelled like burnt coffee and worry. He said what managers always say, "You don't do that, Sierra. You don't confront guests." I said steady, I did what I had to do. Miles Hargrove stood face red and shouted things that made people look away. "Have you any idea who I am?" I heard the clip at the table. "We don't take advice from servers." He pointed, he sneered, he wanted me gone. Phones came out the restaurant, hummed. Someone recorded. I was hustled into the office like I'd committed a crime. Kevin said, "If he wants you gone, we're done." That's how power works sometimes. It eats inconvenient people to protect comfort. He suspended me pending review, put me out on a ledge with a stack of "We'll call you." But I couldn't walk away. It was 7:45 p.m. and the vertiport wasn't far. My uncle's voice was a loop in my head. "You fly a red-tagged bird, you don't have time to regret it." I ran. I don't run well in flats, but I ran anyway through streets that smelled like garbage and fried dough, past the train that crawled slow with its indifferent lights. I got there with minutes to spare. From outside the fence, I saw the rotors spin and a security guard waving someone in. The guy climbing in was Miles. The pilot had his checklist out. My lungs were on fire. My knees felt like they belonged to someone else, and I charged the gate like a lunatic. "Stop! Don't take off!" I screamed. Wind from the rotors almost knocked me down. People shouted. The pilot called the office. Miles looked at me like I'd ruined his evening and his day. I was grabbed by a guard, dragged, pushed toward the sidewalk. Then, a shift so small and huge it felt like the world staked claim to a different kind of truth, the pilot came back with a clipboard and said flat, "Sir, this aircraft was red-tagged this morning. Hydraulic failure. We've got a record." An FAA inspector showed up because someone in maintenance had called it in when I called the heliport earlier and said, "This is an emergency." Long story short, the plane was grounded because someone had forged a signature on a repair form to make it look airworthy. That fabrication put Miles and others at risk. The pilot and inspector pulled out documents, and suddenly my photo of that red tag mattered and my uncle's name mattered, and the moment I'd been mocked for morphed into the thing that might have saved lives. Miles walked away, pale. The rotors came to rest, and for 5 minutes I felt like air itself had a backbone. But the world doesn't reward the lone person who points out the obvious. Sometimes the world punishes them because punishment is cheaper than fixing systems. The heli company, Shoreline Charters, filed a lawsuit against me within days. Defamation, trespassing, interference with business operations. $2 million in damages. My phone, which had been blinking with "You're a hero," messages got flooded with strangers saying I was a publicity seeker, a liar, a liability. Social media is a wildfire that burns whatever smells good at the moment. Hero one day, villain the next. The company dug into my life, rent notices, scholarship emails, and painted a picture they thought would stick a desperate girl trying to get paid. The narrative shifted quicker than I could breathe. I had choices: sign a gag order and take a payout, shut up and go back to survival, or fight. My public defender was exhausted, but honest. "This is a slap. They're trying to bury you." They offered options. Settle, capitulate, sign away your voice. I thought about my mother who fixed engines and told me the truth mattered more than comfort, and I chose to fight. That's when new players entered, people I hadn't expected. A woman named Eleanor Voss, who was old money but had a thing about fairness, reached out. She didn't want a photo op. She wanted justice. She hired a lawyer, an investigator who used to work FAA cases, and they started pulling threads, forged signatures, pressure on mechanics, a slew of fines. Shoreline had quietly paid instead of cleaning house. The more they pulled, the worse it got for Shoreline, and the more solid my weird, messy truth felt in public. Act 3. Resolution and open ending. The story changed again. A press conference, stacks of documents on a table, people in suits who suddenly didn't smile. The investigators presented the maintenance logs, the forged signatures, testimony from mechanics who said they were pressured to sign off things that weren't fixed. The company that tried to bankrupt me ended up under federal investigation. The lawsuit against me was dismissed. Miles Hargrove, who at first hid behind lawyers, eventually stood and said in front of cameras, "She saved my life, and I owe her." He helped reinstate the scholarship I lost, not because he was required to, but because under the relentless light of scrutiny his conscience had a choice. I didn't get a tidy Hollywood ending. I still had to rebuild. Still had sleepless nights, still dealt with people who said loudly that I'd asked for it. But I also got a scholarship back, got to go to school for transportation safety. And with Eleanor, we launched a small fund to help workers who speak up. Legal support, counseling, a little bankroll, so the next person isn't alone. We called it StandBridge because that's what I wanted, a bridge between courage and protection. Here's the messy, beautiful truth: speaking up cost me, and it saved lives. And both things are true at once. People will try to silence you with money, with law, with character assassination. And sometimes the system will fail you until someone with power decides it's easier to do the right thing than to be shamed into it. That's not a victory lap. It's a warning. Systems are designed to protect the comfortable, not necessarily the correct. So I'll leave you with this. And I mean it. What would you do if you saw something obviously wrong? Would you step in knowing you might lose a job, a reputation, sleep? Or would you stay quiet and protect your small world? I don't have a neat moral to hand you, just an invitation. Tell me in the comments a time. You either spoke up or stayed silent, and why? Do you think systems should legally protect people who call out danger? Should there be funds? Laws, immediate protections? Debate it below. Be honest. Be sharp, be kind. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear that courage doesn't come free. It comes costly, and sometimes it comes with a reward we couldn't have imagined. And hey, if you ever have a red tag in your life, don't ignore it. You know what I mean? Yeah, that happened.